Prologue. They say your heart knows the truth before your mind is ready to hear it. Mine whispered, then screamed, and I ignored it until it broke me. My name is Emma. I was 25 when I realized you can belong to two men for completely different reasons. One for the fire he awakens in you, the other for the home he reminds you of. This is the story of how I fell in love. Twice, and lost something both times. Chapter 1. The Touch of Power. At 25, I thought I had figured out my path. I worked as a project coordinator at one of New York City's most elite interior design firms, where the office smelled of new leather portfolios and barely disguised ambition. Each morning, I walked through the glass doors with a latte in hand, pretending I felt confident, pretending I had more than just rent, bills, and the occasional thrill of a new client brief to keep me going. In truth, I was exhausted of the routine, the sameness, the constant sense that I was living someone else's life in a body I didn't fully recognize. And then Nathan Cole touched my arm. I remember it clearly. A Tuesday, the kind of gray, wet day that turns Manhattan into a blur of umbrellas and car horns. I was reviewing a client presentation in the conference room when I felt a hand graze my sleeve. "Emma," he said, his voice low but steady, "I need you in my office." He wasn't asking. He never did. Nathan was the kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice. The room adjusted to him. He didn't smile much, and when he did, it felt like lightning through a clear sky. Rare, arresting, almost dangerous. Tall, always in dark, sharply tailored suits, with stormy eyes that studied more than they spoke. Married, brilliant, and, for reasons I couldn't name yet, devastatingly magnetic. I followed him without question, heart thudding a little too hard. His office was minimalist, masculine. Walnut shelves, steel fixtures, a single black and white photograph of what I would later learn was Vienna, where he once lived. There was no clutter, just him, and the subtle scent of expensive cologne, and something darker beneath it. Power, control. "Close the door," he said without looking up. I did. He poured whiskey into 2 tumblers without asking if I wanted any. I took it. My fingers shook slightly as I brought the glass to my lips. "I like people who listen," he said finally, his eyes now on me, "but I like more those who know when not to." I didn't know what to say, so I stayed silent. My heart raced. He stepped closer, set his glass down, and gently touched my chin, lifting it until our eyes met. "You listen too much, Emma." The air between us changed, thickened, charged. He didn't kiss me, not yet. But something in me shifted that day. The part that had slept, that had gone numb in routine and quiet compromise, flickered to life. I left his office feeling like I'd stepped into a world I didn't understand, but desperately wanted to. That night, I lay in bed beside Leo, my longtime boyfriend. I stared at the ceiling and counted the spaces between our breaths. He was warm, familiar, kind, but as he turned in his sleep and reached for me without waking, I felt a pang of guilt, and something worse, longing, for a man I barely knew, for a voice that said my name like it meant something, for the fire I had forgotten I needed, and that was only the beginning. Chapter 2. The Ghost from the Past. It was a Thursday when the past found me again. I had stayed late at the office, polishing a presentation for a high-end restaurant redesign. The city had slipped into one of its warm autumn evenings, when the air still smelled of hot pavement, and the leaves hadn't yet fully committed to changing. I walked home, earbuds in, trying to drown the echo of Nathan's voice from earlier that day. Low, deliberate, calling me remarkable as if the word meant something more than it should. I turned the corner to my apartment and nearly dropped my phone. Leo was leaning against the brick wall outside my building, hoodie pushed up to his elbows, guitar case resting beside him like an old companion. He looked older, leaner, his eyes darker than I remembered. "You look expensive," he said, a crooked grin forming. "Didn't think you'd turn into one of them." I froze. My heart beat a little too fast. Leo? Still got that memory, huh? His voice hadn't changed. Not really. It still had that scratch of Brooklyn edges, softened by time. He pushed off the wall and came closer, pausing just out of reach. "You going to invite me up? What are you doing here?" I asked. He shrugged. "I missed the girl who used to sing in the subway at night. That girl was long gone. Or so I thought. But hearing those words, that part of me, brought something back I hadn't felt in years." He followed me upstairs without another word. The air in the elevator felt too close. My mind kept flashing back to the last time we'd seen each other. The fight, the tears, the silence that followed. We had been barely 20, kids playing at adulthood. In my apartment, he didn't ask for water or make small talk. He set down his guitar and stood in the center of my living room, looking around like he was trying to memorize every detail. "You okay, Emma?" he asked eventually. I didn't answer right away. I wasn't okay. I hadn't been for a while, I don't know, I finally whispered. "You showing up out of nowhere. It's not fair." He gave me a look I couldn't read. Life's not fair, but sometimes you get a second chance to say something you should have said the first time. I folded my arms. "And what's that?" He took a step closer. "That I never really stopped missing you." Silence hung between us. He didn't touch me, but I could feel it. That pull, that familiar ache, the part of me that remembered the comfort of his embrace, the way his hands felt tangled in my hair. But it wasn't just nostalgia, it was danger, because I was no longer the girl he'd left. And my heart was already halfway caught in another fire. Chapter 3. Torn between worlds, the next few days passed like fragments. Flashes of emotion, late-night thoughts, and overlapping voices. I found myself drifting at work, barely hearing clients, staring too long at texts from Leo that made my chest tighten. He was still in the city, crashing at a friend's place, wanting to talk, to see me. Meanwhile, Nathan's presence at the office grew more deliberate. His subtle glances, the way he brushed past me a little too close. 2 men, one past, one future, and me cracked open in the middle. One night, Leo invited me to a rooftop bar in Brooklyn where he used to play sets. I said yes. The skyline shimmered behind him as he played guitar, eyes closed, mouth barely moving with the lyrics. My heart felt exposed, like every chord pulled at threads I had long since buried. Afterward, we walked in silence. He reached for my hand, and for a moment I didn't pull away. "I know I messed up," he said quietly. "Back then, but I'm here now." "You don't know what I've become," I replied, barely above a whisper. "I don't care. I just want the truth, Emma. No more masks." Later that night, Nathan called. He never called. He asked if I could meet him at the Gramercy Park Hotel. I went. The room was dimly lit, sleek, intimate. He didn't speak much, just took my coat, poured wine, and sat beside me on the velvet sofa. "I can't stop thinking about you," he murmured. My breath caught. "You're married. I'm many things. But with you, I'm something else, someone better. And that terrifies me." His lips brushed mine. That night, I didn't go home. I woke up in a tangle of sheets and silk, his warmth against my skin, guilt curled somewhere deep in my ribs. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering who I had become, and why, despite everything, I didn't want to leave. Chapter 4. The cracks beneath the surface. Every secret has a weight, and mine were beginning to crush me. I couldn't meet Leo's eyes when he showed up at my door 2 days later, with a bag of groceries and a smile like nothing had changed. But something had. I let him cook us dinner, and I laughed at his stories. I even let him kiss me that night. Soft, familiar, nostalgic. But when I closed my eyes, it wasn't him I imagined. At work, Nathan avoided me for a full day before cornering me in the elevator. "You're avoiding me," he said. "I'm not. You are, and I don't like it." His hand brushed mine, and I pulled away. "I can't keep doing this," I whispered. He leaned in close, lips near my ear. "You already are." I stared at my reflection in the elevator door. I didn't recognize the woman in front of me. She was bold and reckless. She wanted more and didn't know how to stop. That weekend, I went to Central Park with Leo. He brought his camera, and I watched as he took candid shots of people laughing, kissing, living. I remembered how he used to photograph me in the morning light, telling me I looked like something worth remembering. "You're quiet today," he said, glancing over. "Just tired," I lied. But he knew. He always did. Back at my apartment, I stepped into the shower alone. Hot water ran over my skin, but I still felt cold. I pressed my hands to the tiles and let the tears come, quiet and angry. I wanted them both. I wanted neither. I wanted to be free and loved, wanted and understood. But those things were starting to feel like opposites. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, I knew it couldn't go on much longer. Something had to break. I just didn't know it would be me. Chapter 5. The Lie I Lived. I told myself I was managing it, that I was in control. But every lie has an expiration date. Nathan started leaving notes, folded slips of paper tucked beneath reports or slid into my coat pocket. Short, cryptic lines like, "I can still taste you," or "You're not a mistake." Every word stung and soothed, and I kept every one of them hidden in a drawer beneath my lingerie. Meanwhile, Leo talked about moving back to the city permanently. "I could pick up more gigs," he said over takeout Thai one night. "Maybe even rent a place in Queens. Be near you." I smiled. I even nodded, but the knot in my stomach tightened. That night, after he fell asleep, I crept out of bed and opened the hidden drawer. I reread Nathan's latest note. It simply said, "Come to me." I didn't go, but I wanted to. God, I wanted to. On a rainy Tuesday, everything began to unravel. I was in Nathan's office, handing off a revised design mock-up. He didn't look up, his jaw clenched tight, fingers tapping a slow rhythm against the glass desk. "You're pulling away," he said quietly. "I have to." "Why?" "Because this isn't real." He stood then, coming around the desk. His voice dropped to a whisper. "It's the realest thing in my life." He reached for me. I stepped back. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered. "I'm not who you think I am." His eyes darkened. "No, Emma, you're exactly who I think you are. You just haven't accepted it yet." That night, I met Leo for dinner. He had reserved a table at the Italian place I loved, the one with candles and wine bottles and a woman playing violin by the window. He was nervous, shifting in his seat. "There's something I have to tell you," he said, his voice low. I froze. "I've been sick." Everything around us dimmed. He looked up. "I didn't want to tell you until I knew how bad it was." "What are you talking about?" "I have lymphoma, stage 3. It's aggressive." I couldn't breathe. The words hit harder than any guilt or affair or lie I'd told. "How long have you known?" "A few months, I thought. I thought maybe it'd go away." I was scared, Em. Tears burned in my eyes. "You should have told me." "I didn't want to be the reason you stayed." And in that moment, every lie I'd lived, every stolen hour with Nathan, every look, every kiss, fell like shattered glass at my feet. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat beside Leo's bed, watching his chest rise and fall, counting breaths, whispering promises I wasn't sure I could keep. Because now I wasn't just choosing between two men. I was choosing who I would be when this ended, and who I could live with after. To be continued. Chapter 6. When Everything Breaks. Grief is a quiet intruder. It doesn't arrive with a bang. It seeps in, slowly, silently. And before you realize it, your bones carry its weight. Leo's diagnosis spread through me like frost. Every time I looked at him, I saw shadows in his smile, tremors in his fingers, and the echo of something slipping through my grasp. We began treatments. Hospitals became our second home. I held his hand through IV drips and blood draws, whispered stories from when we were kids to distract him. He'd smile, weak but real, and say I still talked too much. Nathan stopped asking for me. The notes ended. The texts turned dry. He was disappearing, or maybe I was. At night, I'd sit in the bathroom while Leo slept, staring at myself in the mirror. My eyes looked older. My lips trembled even when I wasn't speaking. I traced my collarbone like it might hold an answer. I wanted to be strong. For Leo. For myself. But some nights, I broke down silently, the weight of guilt and love too much for one person to bear. One afternoon, Leo looked at me while the nurse changed his chemo bag. "You don't have to stay," he whispered. "Don't say that. I know you still think about him." My heart stilled. "I don't blame you," he added. "But don't stay here out of pity, Em. I want to remember us as real, not as some obligation." Tears filled my eyes. "You are not an obligation." He smiled, pale but fierce. "Then don't make me one." That night, I went for a walk. Ended up outside Nathan's building, unplanned, uncertain. I stared at the door for 10 minutes before walking away. I didn't need his fire. Not now. Instead, I went home and crawled into bed with Leo. I curled into his chest and whispered, "I'm here." And for the first time in weeks, I meant it. But life doesn't wait for our clarity. A week later, his fever spiked. They rushed him into intensive care. Machines surrounded him, beeping, humming, counting down. I held his hand, kissed his temple, told him I loved him. He didn't wake up. 3 days later, I lost him. The silence afterward was the loudest thing I've ever known. Chapter 7. The Ashes of What Was. After the funeral, the world felt distant, like I was watching my life through fogged glass. People brought flowers, food, meaningless words. He was so brave. He's in a better place. Time heals. Time didn't heal. It blurred. It numbed. It erased edges until I no longer knew where pain ended and memory began. I stopped going to work, stopped answering texts. Nathan didn't call. For weeks, I existed in Leo's apartment. I couldn't bring myself to leave it. His scent lingered in the pillows. His books were still open on the coffee table, as if he'd come back to finish a chapter. I reread every note he'd written me over the years. Scribbles on receipts, lyrics on napkins, doodles with I love yous hidden inside them. They were all I had left of the man who once made me feel like I was the only song worth writing. One night, I found the old Polaroid of us from our first road trip. We were laughing, wind in our hair, faces sunburned, young, free. I broke down. I screamed into the silence, tore through drawers, through everything I couldn't bear to keep. When I finally collapsed on the floor, chest heaving, face wet with tears, I realized something. Grief had consumed me, but it hadn't destroyed me. The next morning, I showered, dressed, left the apartment, walked aimlessly through the city until I found myself standing in front of the firm. Through the glass, I saw Nathan. Our eyes met, and something passed between us. Not fire, not need. Recognition. He came to the door, opened it, said nothing. "I'm not the same girl," I told him. "I know," he said. "Neither am I." I nodded. "I need to be alone. I understand." And for once, I believed him. He stepped back. I walked away. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't fall apart. I sat on my fire escape, watched the city breathe, and whispered Leo's name to the stars. He was gone, but I was still here, and maybe, just maybe, that meant I still had a life left to live. Chapter 8. The Woman I Choose to Be. 6 months later, I moved into a small apartment in Soho. Just me, my camera gear, and the quiet hum of starting over. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't anything I ever planned, but it was mine. I freelanced again, weddings, street shoots, moody portraits. I found joy in shadows and morning light, in the honesty of a lens. Slowly, I stitched myself back together with every shutter click. I started journaling, meditating, saying no, saying yes, only when I meant it. Nathan sent a bouquet of white lilies on my birthday. No note. I didn't respond. I thought of Leo every day, but the ache softened. Grief had taken root in me, but it no longer ruled me. I learned to live beside it. One afternoon, I found an old voicemail Leo had left. I hadn't heard it in months. If you're listening to this, I hope you're still making art, still singing in the shower, still dreaming too big. You always were the brave one. I love you. That's all. I cried, but I also smiled. He was gone, but I was here, and I had chosen not just to survive, but to live. On the first day of spring, I walked to the river and let the sun warm my face. I whispered his name into the wind and let it carry, not with sorrow, with gratitude. He taught me how to love. Nathan taught me how to burn, but I taught myself how to rise. This isn't a love story. It's a becoming, and I am still becoming. Afterward, from Emma. If you've come this far, thank you, not just for reading my story, but for holding space for the messiness of it. I never thought I would be the kind of woman who lost herself between two men. I never imagined I'd lie, betray, grieve, or break. But I did. And in the ashes of all that, I found something I never expected to myself. Nathan taught me how to feel again. Leo taught me how to love deeply. But no one ever tells you that the most important relationship you'll ever fight for is the one you have with yourself. I will never forget either of them. One left a scar, the other a heartbeat. And me, I'm still here, still healing, still growing. If you've ever loved someone you couldn't have, if you've ever made a choice that tore you apart, or stood at the edge of your own becoming, know this, you're not alone. You're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to leave. You're allowed to begin again. This story isn't just mine anymore. Now it's yours too. Emma.